Friends, today I'd like to ask a rather difficult question. Is coaching earning a bad name? That sounds like a very ominous kind of statement, but let me try and answer it in a somewhat constructive manner. The truth is, coaching works. It works very well and is extremely efficacious. However, like any other professional service, bad news always travels much faster than good news. And it is true that many sponsors and coaches are dissatisfied and are certainly saying bad things about coaching and their experiences of having worked with or interacted with coaches. Without lamenting and bemoaning the whole issue, I'd like to step back and dip into our 19 years of experience of having worked with clients, managed over 2,000 paid coaching engagements, and try and understand what is causing this gap. I call it the four impact gaps between promise and reality. The first impact gap is what I call the consultation gap. Before you have a coaching dialogue, it is important for the coach or the coach solution provider to have a consultative dialogue to understand the stated and unstated needs of clients. Clients may have some needs, but unless we engage in a deep conversation, it might be very hard for a client who's uninitiated to give you a good brief about what they really want from coaching. They are likely to end up telling you some very transactional micro behaviors that they want to fix. So that's the first back gap, which is what I call the consultation gap. The second is what I call the installation gap. Whatever understanding we have of the client's needs, how do we design this whole solution and install it in the client organization so that it is set up for success? This calls for a lot of collaborative efforts. This calls for a lot of education. This calls for ensuring that there is awareness. This calls for ensuring all the people in the system are aligned. We know which program to use and so on and so forth. So, bad installation can certainly lead to bad outcomes. Now, bad installation with an improper understanding of the needs, you can imagine how bad it can go. The third is what I call the competence gap, the gap between whatever you design and what you actually deliver. Now, there are many things one can say about competence, but I'd like to restrict it to maybe two or three things. First, credentials do not equal competence. Just because I have a certificate does not make me a competent coach. I need to practice, I need to receive feedback, I need guidance before I can become competent. Second, there is something called contextual competence. What does that mean? I remember many years ago, a very young person used to work in my team, and he used to tell me, Ganesh, you know what? My dream is to become a marriage counselor, and I want to go and do that. I said, yeah, first you need to get married and deal with your own marriage before you can counsel others on marriage. He said, you think that's needed? I'm a very good counselor. I said, you can be a great counselor, but you need to understand marriage. Deal with your own marriage first. So, if you want to coach someone, you need to have a reasonable understanding of their context so that you can enter that world. Zero understanding of context actually can lead to poor contextual competence. There is just one more thing I'd like to say, and I'd like to call out this fantastic phrase that Jagdish Seth and others wrote in the book Clients for Life. They call it professional independence. And they look at professional independence having three dimensions: financial independence, intellectual independence, emotional independence. That I don't need this assignment, I am financially independent. I don't need you to agree to whatever I say, and vice versa. My sense of worth does not come from this relationship. Coaches need to do a lot of work with themselves to really develop this professional independence. Otherwise, they will seriously compromise what they bring to the table in the coaching relationship. Finally, is what I call the satisfaction gap. There is a certain understanding, there is a certain design, there's a certain competence, but finally, whatever you do can lead to dissatisfaction if the client is not clear about what they actually had in mind. Now, I must call out that all research in the field of counseling and therapy says there is a 10-15% placebo effect in any helping relationship, which means people do feel good when someone listens to them. But that is not the outcome that clients want out of coaching. They want much more. Therefore, how do I really kind of ensure that I am set up for good outcomes? How do I ensure that I am candid with stakeholders about how we are making progress? How do we ensure there is scope to course correct, to ensure that we are realistic of outcomes, or we work together to enhance and raise the bar? So, if we address these four gaps, I think we can try and reduce the kind of negative perception that today exists about coaching, which is very worrying for me. It's worrying because businesses have huge needs in terms of developing leaders. It's very tough to be a leader. They need help, and coaches can help. But you cannot just get into a room and have a conversation and assume that coaching will work. That's really my message. Thank you.